Hi, Unity. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Oh, thanks so much, Cheryl. It's a pleasure to be meeting with you, and thank you for having me here.
Yes. So, can you start off by telling the audience just a little bit about yourself and your relationship to arthritis?
Yes, sure. So my arthritis journey began. I basically was born into a near-death experience, had like a traumatic birth experience, and my mom was a nurse, and so she recognized like really early on that there was something going on with my health. So she saw like when she dressed me, she noticed that I seemed to be in pain, and she would tell the doctors, but they were like, you know what, it's first time mom, you just have a colicky baby, you're just being overprotective, and
Wow.
but then when I started to walk, they saw my gait was different. So then they put boots on me and they thought, oh, she just needs boots. But I would scream when they would put the boots on. And my mom's like, no, it's like this hurts her when I'm putting them on. They were like, no, you're just overprotective. And then one morning I stopped moving half of my body. And so when I stopped
Wow.
moving half of my body, that was when they were like, okay, there's something going on. And so I ended up seeing different specialists. They did like different videos with me, different like brain scans. They thought maybe cerebral palsy. It was, it's hard when someone is so little. Like I was diagnosed just after my first birthday, around 15 months of age. And that's a tricky age because you can't really have a dialogue with what's going on, right?
Right.
It's all based off of what they physiologically could see, and it was a rheumatoid factor blood work that ended up being able to give them the diagnosis after a lot of false ideas on the way, just trying to figure it all out. So yeah, that.
Wow. Wow. So it's good that your mom was so proactive, with noticing what was going on from a young age. And, I know it's hard to summarize in a short period of time, but can you share some of the highs and lows of growing up as a young child with such a misunderstood condition?
Yeah, sure. I would say that, because I've had it as long as I can remember, at first I didn't really realize, immediately like how different I was until, people would go to play, for example, hide and go seek, and I was sometimes sore, like my knees would be sore to move, or I'd have swollen joints, like I had it, and I still do, like in different joints in my body. And so, realizing that things weren't as easy, like other kids would, especially with sports activities and things that were more of a physical nature, that they would go for it. And I wanted to, but I would realize, oh, there's limits here. And then I also had like splinting, a lot of doctor's appointments and blood work. I was offered to live at Toronto Sick Kids Hospital, and
Oh,
and basically do schooling from there and live at the hospital, and then come home for like holidays and that. But I was like, I don't want to do that. And my parents,
oh, wow.
they were saying, they listened, they let me stay home with them, which I was grateful for.
Wow.
uh, I would say one of the scariest moments was being in a wheelchair. I was
Mhm.
around 7 years old, and what had happened was I'd been playing hide and go seek, and I'd been kind of like curled up in a ball, had this really great hiding spot, but then my knee locked up, and it locked up so bad that I couldn't move it, and so my parents had to, basically carry me to the car, and then the
Wow.
hospital, and then they said they were going to have to do surgery for my knee. And I was being wheeled around in ER, and I said, I just had this, whether you call it like an inner voice or inside of my heart, this calling, like, no, like you're going to be okay, just have more time. And usually whatever medically went to happen, I just did it. Like I was, a quote unquote good kid. So I would,
Mhm.
whatever blood work, medication, testing, no complaints. But I really stood my ground. I just said, please give me time, just give me time. And so my parents, they advocated and they asked for the time, and the doctors were kind of like, oh, well, like, I don't, I don't think that's going to be enough. But they put me under, and then when they put me under, they were able to like move my knee into like a straight position and put a cast on it. And so I was carried up and down the stairs in elementary school for a while because I had this big cast, and I couldn't, crutches like with my wrists and my fingers and everything, also arthritic. I didn't have the strength to use crutches, and so I was, basically praying and hoping when that cast came off that I'd be able to walk. And fortunately that I was able to do that. So there's lots of like, different stories, but I would say that would be one of a pretty big story for my
Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
from your childhood. Yeah. And if you don't mind sharing, you don't have to if you don't want to, but
Sure.
what time period was this? Was this in like the 1990s or the
Yep. Yeah,
okay, in the 90s?
90s. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would have been, I believe I was around 7 or 8 years old. And so it would have been, oh no, not 90, sorry, 87.
80s. All right, because we're the same age. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Or around the same age. I was born in 81.
Okay. Yeah. 79, November
Okay.
79.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Math is hard, but yeah, similar. And okay, so because one of the things that people who are newly diagnosed don't always know is how different the treatments are now for both juvenile idiopathic arthritis and adult rheumatoid arthritis. And that, that the severity that people experienced who are diagnosed prior to like the 2000s, like I was diagnosed in 2003. The severity and the rate of progression was a lot just worse, for lack of a better word,
Yes.
than now. So I always want to put that caveat in, but there's still many children and adults who don't respond to the Western medical, current treatments, but many of them do.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah. Yeah. And then, another thing I'm always fascinated by is that period of adolescence, like that, transition from being a child to more like wanting to be an adult, and also being a young adult and maybe a college student with balancing juvenile arthritis. Do you have any memories or wisdom to share from those periods?
Sure. So I would say that when I was adolescent, that was the hardest time. Physically, I was really unwell. I was in a lot of pain. I'd been on a lot of different medication having arthritis so young. So they started out with baby aspirin, like when I was really little. And then that, grew into, they tried sulfasalazine on me. They did prednisone at one point and gold treatments as well, and cortisone injections. The gold treatments I had a bad reaction to. So like I had like a breakout of like hives, and they had to like cut a sample to like understand what was going on with that. And the prednisone, like a lot of people have experienced, it's a tricky drug. Like you feel a little bit, like for myself, I just felt kind of funny and in my mind, like just tired and just not like myself, not fresh, And I also weight gain. So I was like poofy from the steroids, but also just seemed to like gain weight like super easy. And so that was really hard, because I, of course, I couldn't participate in gym the same way too. And right. And I didn't know anyone else with arthritis at the time. So I was also afraid for the future, like afraid, like, oh, is this just going to get worse? Am I ever going to be able to do the things that I want to do like other kids, or, one day, get married and have a family and all that kind of thing. So that was a pretty tricky time period for myself. And, and then in high school, I ended up, I think I was around 16 years of age, 16 or 17. And that's when I started to have a dialogue with the doctors, more of a questioning everything. So when you're a child growing up with arthritis, mom or dad say, take this, or the doctor says, take it, and you do, right? But once you're a teenager, you start to kind of find your own voice in a different way and be your own advocate. So I started to say like, okay, well, I was at methotrexate at that point, and I was saying, well, why do I have to get blood work, so much blood work? Like, what are you guys like exactly looking for, and what's going on with that? And then I started to understand like how intensive that medication was at the time for my body. And also told, because I was a teenager, that one day, when I went to be active or if I went to have a family and I was still on that medication in my future, that you can't do that with that medication. And I thought, oh, this isn't going to work then, because I said, even if this ends up working, and at the time it wasn't working for me, like nothing was giving me a breakthrough, I knew I want to be a mom. Like that was a huge driver for me. And I thought, well, even if this does work, this isn't going to be my answer, because then I can't have my dream. And my dream was to, have a family. There's other ideas I had, like writing and teaching or counseling, but I knew for sure mom was my number one dream, and so I actually walked away. I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. And they were like, you can't do that. And I said, there's got to be something else for me. Like if this was working for me, then that'd be different. But I've been on this path for my whole life. it was 16 or 17 years at that point.
Mhm.
And like I'm sharing, I know, for some people, maybe they've got that progress, and then, then it's a different story, a different journey. But for me, it wasn't helping me, and it was
Yeah.
only, and there were so many risks involved because of how strong the medication was. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's fascinating to talk to you because it's like, I always like hearing people's stories that are so different from mine, right? Because
Yeah.
having this platform, I want to make sure to give a voice to people with different experiences, and I've had other people on here who've taken alternate paths. But yeah, like I was on methotrexate. I've been on it since the very beginning, and except for my pregnancy.
Yeah.
And it's worked pretty well. I mean, I've always needed to take something else in conjunction with it. So I've never
Yeah.
just been like methotrexate, what they call monotherapy. But yeah, I mean, but that doesn't mean that other people all have a great time with it. This is your journey. And as a teenager, that's your right to kind of, like you said, advocate for yourself. So yeah, what happened next?
Okay, so I was nervous, right? Like I didn't
Yeah.
know for sure if I was making the right move, but and I didn't have anything around me to really understand like what the right move would be. But I thought there's got to be more to this, And the good news is I was a reader. I like to self-educate on different topics that I would be interested in. And I ended up having different people instrumental in my life who kind of would show up at the right time. Sometimes it would be an author, sometimes it would be like a person, like a friend, or even a parent, from a relationship that I was in. And I started
Yeah.
to be introduced to other, different ways of approaching wellness. Now, I also had known growing up with arthritis that there was a lot of different ideas that people would give my mom, right? Like, oh, get her on rice cakes, or, try this. There was like a horse cream at one point someone gave us, and all sorts of things. And, my mom would try it with me, and nothing would happen. Right. So I understand the letdown of trying different approaches, and kind of you can get burnt out by that, thinking like, no, none of all of this is a sham. But fortunately, I got guided to be introduced to different natural therapies. So, for example, naturopathic medicine, like a naturopathic doctor, learning about that approach. I also started studying about how nutrition can play a role with inflammation in the body, and so kind of experimenting and learning more about that. So, at one point on my path, I actually was raw vegan for a while, and like
And if
gluten.
people don't know, you're saying raw space vegan, right?
Mhm.
I just want to make sure, because if people aren't aware that they might
Yeah.
be like, what's raw vegan? Like as if it's one word.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm just always trying to think of, because people ask me questions sometimes afterwards. I was like, oh shoot, I should have clarified. Yeah. So
Yeah.
vegan with only not just vegan, but raw food, like uncooked. Yeah. Wow. That's intense.
It was intense. Yes. It was gluten-free, raw vegan. So you'd make like your nut cheeses, and you'd use like a dehydrator to do baking, or if you
Oh
want
yeah.
something warm, so that way you didn't lose. Basically, the concept is you don't want to kill out any of the nutrition, or like the helpful enzymes and that. And, honestly, that was really helpful. Like all of these different tools where I saw a difference. Like I was noticing like, oh, I'm more comfortable. I'm waking up more comfortable. I'm moving better. There was nothing that was like a cure, but all of it gave me more progress than anything else had before. And I also started studying energy medicine. So
Yeah.
I started learning about reiki, and other forms of energy medicine, from sound medicine, as well as even shamanism, and different forms
Wow.
of natural therapies. And I just had so much progress with that. And then two other fundamental things that happened to me was when I was a little girl, there was this one physiotherapist who came into our home, and she actually did a meditation tape for me. And the meditation tape had me visualize pain as balls, like these colorful balls in my body, and had me like kind of play with them and move them out. And I remember thinking, wow, like it made me feel like I had some kind of power over the pain. And that was really good for me. And I also felt like a little bit of a difference from that, like as a child. And I thought, what is this? Like how is this possible? So it made me open-minded about things that maybe would seem more magical or more unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
And then the other experience that I had was when I was in high school. I saw, I believe it was an occupational therapist at the time, or someone doing pain management, and they hooked me up to a neurofeedback machine. And so I could hear like the boop, 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 right? And all these noises. I thought, well, I don't understand what's going on, but okay. And then she said, okay, I want you to try something. I want you to try to just quiet your mind, take a few deep breaths, and just, find a space inside of you that's just really still. And so I thought, okay, sure. And so I did that. And because I'd used that meditation tape, when I was little and tried different things like that, I had progress and the machine went really quiet. And then I got excited because I thought, oh, did I do that? And then as soon as I was excited, it was like, boop, 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 boop.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then she explained to me that what she was trying to show me was that stress has an impact on the disease and had an impact on my pain. And that if I could learn to go into a space within myself, then I could at the very least, help to relax like my muscles around my joints. And by doing that, that would thereby alleviate some of the discomfort that was there. And so that was another one of those kind of magical moments, but that was grounded in like science and modern medicine as well as later, historical medicine too, that helped me have that open mind to see I need to keep exploring these ideas and these concepts because there's something here that's working for me. And so I have to find out like what this is all about,
Yeah, really, it seems like a journey of understanding the power of your own mind, and that mind body connection, which it does seem that the Western medicine is catching up, or the Western science is catching up with some of these, and that's just a gross generalization, but I know that like biofeedback is an example, or, doing functional MRIs of people. I know they've done ones of people meditating and shown, how powerful it is. So I think that's incredible. I mean, I feel like when I'm in a lot of pain, sorry, just projecting here, I don't have a lot of energy to like mental energy to learn new things. So I'm trying to imagine you as like, a teen, and then maybe, early 20 something, you're in all this pain and you actually expended the energy, which is so hard to do, to learn these things. My hat's off to you.
Thank you. I think what helped with that is that as an only child, and as someone who also couldn't participate in activities that my peers were doing, that meant that storybooks were huge for me. Like I always had my nose in a book, and in those imaginary worlds, that I could enter through the imagination and sometimes through my writing as well. That was like an escape from the pain. I wouldn't think about my pain when I'd be reading or writing stories. And so I think that helped be a natural crossover for meditation, because meditation, for the ones I experienced, was basically like going on a journey within myself, that I wasn't in my body where I had all these limits at the time, right? These limits and boundaries. Pain. I was able to go somewhere different. And so I think that helped me too, to get into that space.
Wow. Yeah. I'm sure some of the listeners will be wondering, like, what were some of the books? Do you mind sharing them that you read about these different practices, or maybe did you visit? I know you mentioned naturopaths, any specific resources, that would be awesome.
Yeah, of course. I would say that one book that I read at one point was Barbara Brennan. And I'm trying to think, I think it was it like The Healing Hands of Light, or there's so many books, honestly, Cheryl, that I've read, but I remember that one was really interesting. Like it went into more about like the chakras and the body as an energetic field. But a huge teacher for myself as well was Dr. Joseph Campbell. He wrote The Power of Myth. And so basically, he was this amazing teacher and philosopher who, he had a moment in his childhood where he saw a totem pole and he thought, what is this? Like, something lit up for him the way that it did for me with like meditations. And he wanted to explore that. So when he became an adult, he started to learn more about all the different stories around the world, like the mythologies and the stories and the themes, and how there was like a commonality in all of them. And he called it the hero's journey. And so I would read books by Joseph Campbell because I love learning about other cultures, and I loved like studying, learning about different spiritual beliefs and different concepts, because my spiritual, that part of myself as well, that gave me a lot of hope. Like I had a lot of faith, but I was very open-minded. So I wanted to keep understanding, like, well, what do other people believe too, and like what else is out there, and so kind of learning all of those different ways, and how there is these common themes and this common narrative and archetypes, that showed me that there's something really magical and so much bigger going on that's connecting everyone. And so that was part of my path too. And I also met some different people who, some of them did like Reiki, some of them did like shamanic work. And I traveled with my husband's career. We ended up in Australia at one point because he was in the visual effects world. He was working on the movie 300. and Happy Feet, and we were there at one point, pregnant in Oz, and I talk about that more in my S.O.S audio stories.
Yes.
Happy to have for your community. I want to give them free access to all of this.
Yes, that's your book and video journey as well. Yeah. So sorry. So you went to Australia, and did you get to do, because I've been to Australia too,
Really?
and studied intercultural studies there as part of my anthropology minor. But yeah, and so there's such a rich history there with Aboriginal traditions. Did you get to learn any of that, or is that where your head was going?
Well, when I was there, I didn't know anybody, except for, of course, my husband, and I was pregnant with our son. And so I was careful where I was going, what I was doing, and there was someone that I ended up meeting at a street market, and she invited me into this meditation circle. And so I joined that. And then I found out that it was also like, doing like intuitive work and mediumship, and they were professionals. And I was just, this person that was interested in all of these things. And then I ended up, but I love meditation. And so that was a natural bridge for me with all that work. So I started sharing, things from that experience with the people in the room. And then they were like, oh, how long have you been doing this for? And I'm like, I don't do this.
You're like, let's see, about 30 minutes. How long have we been here? Yeah.
And so they said, no, like you do this. And so I felt like, well, it makes sense because of, path of pain and being an only child. There was a lot of time where I would practice meditation, or I would just go into like those imaginative spaces within myself, or really think deeply about spiritual ideas. And there were different dreams I had that would come true as well, but there's a lot to talk about there. Anyway, so I realized like, okay, there's something more going on with this. So I felt like Joseph Campbell has this saying where he basically says, if you follow your bliss, then the universe will open doors where there were once only walls. And so I felt like that's what was happening, that when I would do things that felt right, like in my heart, and that felt right, like in, kind of like soul alignment, or consciousness, mindful alignment, however you want to, see that, that suddenly I would be in the right place at the right time with the right person to learn like the next thing. It was almost like this toolkit that was growing within me, these different experiences that I got to have, and that really shaped me, into becoming, and still do, because every day I think we're all learning and growing from each other in the world around us. Right.
And what were you studying at the time?
So when I was originally doing a double degree. So I was studying English and psychology because I thought I either want to be a teacher, a writer, or a psychologist. So
that's so similar to me. Sorry, and we're talking about you today, but yeah, I studied psychology, and I was going to get my master's in special ed because that was my passion at the time. And anyway, but then I became an occupational therapist. But yeah, now you've written so much. So that's so cool that you're doing psychological work, of course. So that's amazing.
Thank you. It's funny how it all comes together, right? Like I ended up, it came across in a whole different way than university, right? But it all connects,
Yeah.
And I love that you are part of that path too. I think that when you come from like the wounded healer path, there is, when you look into like being empowered by it and really learning and exploring more, it's interesting how we can kind of meet or share commonalities there, right?
I've never heard of that phrase, the wounded healer. I love that. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I just had to write that down as you said.
Sure.
It's a beautiful one. I took a class in college called From Shamanism to Biomedicine, the Anthropology of Healing. And it was so fascinating, but it was the only like medical focused anthropology class at my school. So I was like really wishing there was more because, so it's funny how, I've ended up learning a little bit over the years, but for my own medical journey, it's been more on the traditional Western medicine, again, just because that's worked for me. But if it hadn't, then I would be seeking more of this because it's fascinating. Yeah. And so I know one of the words, I'm just going to be self-reflective about myself for 1 second. One of the words I have a funny relationship to, is that right? Or with, too, maybe, is healing. Like, because I guess I feel a little defensive because even though I feel like I'm already a whole person, like a healed person, like in terms of my being. I know my physical body isn't in an ideal situation, because I need this medication to function, but I'm like, I don't need to heal. I'm already healed. I'm cool. Yeah. But then I know that for most people, healing is such a powerful concept and like self-healing. So can you explain what healing means to you? almost
Sure.
like on the tell me like I'm a kindergartner way so that I understand better. Cause I have let's just say I have complicated feelings about the word healing for some unknown
Yeah.
reason.
Right. No, it makes sense, and I think that there would have been moments in my life where I would have as well. I would have even been sometimes even angry about that word, like, don't tell me that word, because I would feel worried, like, oh, that's something that maybe is unattainable. That's how I would have felt for
Yeah.
myself. And so the word healing, it's interesting. If we think of the word healthy, we actually see the word heal inside of the word healthy, right?
You're
And so,
right.
and it's heal thy. So if you think of like a healthy body, it's heal thy body. Or if you think of a healthy mind, it's heal thy mind. Or
All
a healthy
right.
soul, it's heal thy soul, right? So if we want to be healthy, then we want to be focused on that word, heal and healing. And so to me, healing or self-healing is about always seeking that wholeness and that harmony and that balance. And for myself, I feel it's a lifelong goal. Like, there can be moments in my life where I feel like, oh, like I'm really on top of this, this space. Like I'm really energetically here, mind, body, emotion, soul. And then there's other times where, like everything in life, there's cycles, right? So I think of it in my book, the S.O.S Energy Report. Spoiler alert, but S.O.S, I make it stand for Seasons of Self. So it's about the seasons as an analogy for ourself and for our life path. And that just like all the seasons in the world, there's different phases. Nowhere is it always summer, or it's always winter or fall or spring. So it comes around again. And to think of healing as basically understanding the cycles of life and the cycles of like energetic wellness and wholeness, and striving towards like harmony and balance, whatever cycle you're in. So if you're in a real challenging time, you can be in the season of winter. Everything can feel kind of
Yeah.
frozen and stiff, especially with arthritis, and blocked, right? But if you're in a really incredible, harmonious, and uplifting place, and it's like the summer, everything feels like moving and fluid and organically growing and fruitful. And so the other thing with healing is it's not about, sometimes when people think of healing or self-healing, they think, oh, you can only do it, on path A or path B. So it's got to be only the natural way or only, modern medical. But to me, it's whatever weaving is meant for each individual, So for example, maybe one person, they're going to get everything they need from nutrition. Maybe someone else, it's modern medicine, and that's exactly their path for healing. And maybe someone, there's another person who it's a weaving of complementary medicines and complementary practices for healing and wellness. But it's interesting because like that course that you talked about, I really see that it's all similar things, but with different words and different ways to approach the same subject matter, and
Right.
it's exciting with like neuroplasticity and the study of the human mind and, positive psychology and even rogue psychology. They're really realizing, spiritual concepts and spiritual breakthroughs that were talked about for thousands of years are now lining up with more of the modern medicine and modern biological perspectives and proof that, they can kind of recognize each other and there can be that harmony. And I think it's
Mhm.
because when there's a fundamental truth, it's true whatever way you look at it. Like if it's true, there's no like, oh, but if I flip it over here, it's not true anymore, right? And so,
Yeah.
sorry to be a bit long-winded.
Oh, no. No, I'm always saying that I go on like soapboxes. You weren't on like a soapbox in a bad way at all, but no, I think this is fascinating. Personally, I find it very, very fascinating. And like I think when you have anxiety about your health, which almost anyone would have anxiety as a normal response to getting a diagnosis,
Yes.
so I think when you feel stress or anxiety, which I think anyone would as a normal response to getting a diagnosis like juvenile idiopathic arthritis or rheumatoid arthritis or ankylosing spondylitis, what your brain wants is a really simple answer, right? The simple answer is you have to only do Western medicine, or the simple answer is you only do alternative paths. And the reality is that for many people, it's going to be a complex situation and it will evolve and change over time. So I liked that how you were saying, you weave the solutions for you out of whatever's working at that moment. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it can change, right? Like there might be some things that stay consistent and that there's a consistent flow. And there might be other things where suddenly you have to adapt. And I think it's so important to stay open-minded and just really see what works for you and to keep open to just, explore that and discover that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that you've done a lot of work on mindset and the power of the mind. Do you want to share a little bit more about that before we delve into your book?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So basically, the one thing with mindset is our mind impacts us. Like it really affects so much of how we're going to do energetically, right? So, for example, the placebo effect, that's a good way to tie in, a spirit, more of a spiritual or etherical concept, like how our mind impacts us. So, the placebo effect was discovered by accident, but I say by synchronicity. And it was during World War II, and Beecher discovered it because they'd run out of morphine. And so, there's these soldiers, they're in pain, they need help. And he didn't want to let them down. He didn't want to be like, oh, well, we don't have any painkiller left. So he did injections of saline instead. And he just pretended it was morphine because he didn't have the heart to say, like this, I don't have anything for you. And then the miracle was that they were having pain relief. They were actually acting as if they'd received the morphine. And that was how the placebo effect was, you could either say accidentally, or I like to say synchronistically discovered. And so modern medicine really understands this as a real phenomenon. And they understand it so much that they actually have to rule it out. So if there's a new medication or treatment that they want to make sure, is genuinely effective, they have to rule out the placebo effect by doing like a sugar pill, like a pretend, treatment. And then they have to see like, okay, well, is it the placebo that is making this happen? Or is this truly this new treatment plan? But I think that is such an important thing to understand. Well, why is the placebo effect even possible, right? Like, why is it even possible that by just having someone's mindset have the expectation that they're going to experience like healing or wellness or comfort or pain relief, that happens? And
Yes.
and so that is one angle of that. There's a lot of different angles and layers. So mindset, we realize, and also like through neuroplasticity and through like Dr. Ellen Langer studies on mindfulness, that our mind has so much power, and whatever we expect, we actually start to create. So if you're coming at this from like a spiritual angle, then you might think about the law of attraction or manifestation. But if you're coming at this from more of like a scientific level or modern medicine, then you can think of like neuroplasticity. You can think of the quantum field, or that maybe like the holographic universe or string theory. It really depends on which way you're weaving it. But once again, it's one of those fundamental truths that no matter which way or which discipline you're approaching it, that we see that the mind is powerful. And then there's a lot of famous books and literature where it talks about that, from centuries ago in all different cultures in the world, different voices that say that, like Hermes talks about as above, so below. And he's not just specifically speaking about the mind, but he's speaking about how, what something is in one way, it is in all ways. And if you think about it, like if you are watching a movie, right, and it's a horror movie, your body will respond as if it should be, be ready to do fight or flight. Your stress response will be triggered. And you can actually, you're going to have that happening in your bloodstream, in your body, your pupils are going to dilate, your heart might go up. If someone, comes up to you unexpectedly, even though you're safe and it's just a movie.
Yeah.
The same thing happens with oxytocin and like feel good hormones and stimulation, that if our mind is around things that are beautiful or peaceful or harmonious, then that's actually the energetic field that we start to build and create. So it's really important that we have consciousness over our thought patterns, and that we put practices into putting time into mindfulness, so that we can empower our mind to gravitate towards the direction that we actually want it to go.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I always bring everything back to acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a mindfulness based therapy that
Yeah.
has worked really well for me. I laugh because I always talk about it. But, yeah, like I think one of the hardest things for me, when I tried to apply this to myself as somebody living with chronic illness or chronic pain, is that to try to be truly present in the present moment when the present moment is not physically super comfortable. Can you explain like how do you do it? No.
Yeah, so I would say that I think that it's not too often that everything about someone's present moment is comfortable. So I know when we have chronic pain or chronic illness, it's very easy to see like we are not comfortable in different, places, or for example, the body. But really, there's always things going on around us or within us that could create stress or turmoil or be distracting. However, the same goes with everything that is harmonious and everything that is balanced, so looking at the simplest things and seeing, well, what is comfortable, what is beautiful here, how can I have, you've probably heard of like an attitude of gratitude, right? Like
Yeah.
and so, even if you're in pain or if there's challenges, kind of saying, okay, well, what can I focus on that I'm grateful for right now? Like that's one pathway in. And then another thing is the seasons of self, and like the energy book that I did. It's about saying, well, I'm in the winter right now. If we think of it as, so if we're in a really rough place, maybe in our body or mind, emotion, maybe it's all of it, maybe it's just physical pain, right? Then we can say, okay, well, this is our winter season. Right now, things can feel cold, they can feel bleak, everything can feel really like desolate, like a frozen spell. But I know that winter doesn't last forever. It can be long. Some winters are harder, but eventually spring will come. And in the spring, just like a seed, we break through, right? The spring is where breakthroughs are born. And that's where new growth happens and possibility. And so by having, thinking of things as like the seasons of self or the seasons of self healing, it can help you when the world around you or within you is really challenging, to think of it that way and go, I'm in a cycle right now. It's a cycle of winter, of challenge. But if I hold on and I work through and I look to weave in whatever healing I can within me and around me, then I can make it to spring, and spring will happen. And from spring comes summer, so forth. So, and that's one of the things that I do with my book, as well as the quiz, where people can kind of understand and rate their energy centers, and see where they're at, and get some ideas for that, dealing with that pain body or that pain perspective, to put it into a healing place.
That's so powerful. Yeah. And I like it starts from a place of acceptance, which I like that you're saying, I accept that, or maybe I don't want to put the word in your mouth, but I know winter is where I'm at. I'm not going to like pretend that I'm in summer, or that if I just tried harder, I would suddenly fast forward out of winter. Like maybe just accepting that, like in the present moment, this is what I'm dealing with, but what is still possible, or what can I still attune myself to in this moment? I think that's been for me the most powerful thing, because I always in the past was like such a problem solver. Like I wanted to just, find the solution, fix it, fix it, fix it, instead of being present with what's just actually there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I want to ask more about okay, so tell us a little more about the S.O.S energy report, a survivor's guide to self-healing breakthroughs that you wrote.
Yes, thank you so much. So, in a nutshell, I did it to be really fast. So I, designed it as a really fast read, and it teaches people about some of these concepts that we're exploring today. So basically, how does modern medicine and science approach ideas like healing, right? And how does ancient, ancestral practices or ancient belief systems approach healing? And where's commonality there, common ground? And then I also explore like the energy centers, specifically through the chakras, and learning more about that. And then there's a questionnaire in there that people can kind of rate and assess their energy through their own self-assessment and self-reflection, and see like, okay, where are some of my body strengths or my body challenges or weaknesses, as well as mind and emotion and soul. And then they can get a number through that. And there's also an online quiz, so that you don't have to do all the math, yourself. You can just pop it into a quiz and have it do it for you. And then you're given a season for each energy center in your body and in your field. So you can see like, oh, okay, this makes sense. I have a lot of winter happening right now. Or maybe there's some areas in your body where there's some spring and summers, and then there's some other areas where there's like a fall or winter season. And then there's basically some suggestions to help you, like to help anyone, the reader, read it and to think, okay, I'm going to think about this way. And then I also have 6 audio stories that are self-healing stories. It's like some, basically a sneak peek into how did this, take shape, right? How did this framework come into existence? How was it grown? And so I share some 6 stories from my life path, and also through my own winter, my own seasons of winter and struggle, and coming into finding this harmony and finding this approaching this through a healing perspective. And so that is what, the book is designed to be, really quick. I have other books on the go, but with COVID and that, I wanted something fast. So anyone who's stressed out or they're in pain or they're just feeling overwhelmed, that they can have a bit of a breakthrough, a few breakthroughs, and feel a little more hope, and really look into healing possibilities for their life path.
That's incredible. And I think I almost wonder if you could find those the old physiotherapists and occupational therapists that planted some of these seeds and kind of go back and say, look what the seeds you planted now have grown into this, incredible journey that you've had.
I would love that. I would love to do that for sure. Yeah.
I'm sure they would love it because like I've worked in pediatrics before, and like I sometimes forget that, something that I taught a child might have, actually stayed with them. But anyway, I'm trying, sorry, I'm like always interrupting my own train of thought. And also the other thing was you mentioned earlier that when you were young and you were on methotrexate, you were really, or, as a teenager, you were worried because you had this dream of being a mother, and they were telling you, the doctors were telling you that you wouldn't be able to if staying on methotrexate. But now you've mentioned that you were pregnant, but can you tell the audience a little bit about the family that you have?
Sure, thank you. So you heard a little sneak peek with my husband. We've been together, it'll be 20 years next week, and we have 2 teenagers, and I'm really grateful that they're thriving and they're well, and it's been, my dream came true, right? My dream to be a mom and to have a family, and I feel really grateful for that. And yeah, and actually we homeschooled for quite a while too, so that was such a gift to be able to have them right there, and they're off into high school now, and they're doing awesome, and I'm super proud of them.
That's so great. Yeah. And I'm curious about how active your disease has been, like in the last, or was it active when you were pregnant at all or postpartum, or
Sure.
summarize the last 15 years? No.
So basically, like everything in life, I have different cycles. So sometimes it's quieter, and then other times, I can still have flare-ups, but it's a lot better than when I was a child. When I was a child, I would wake up and sometimes I couldn't walk, and I would have consistent joint pain. I would always feel the weather like a walking barometer. And I know that the more that I put into practice all these different things that I help other people explore within themselves, that I see huge progress, but if I'm off and I'm doing all the things that I shouldn't be doing, right? Like if I'm for myself, and I know it's unique for everybody, but for me, if I have like too much gluten or sugar, or if I'm not putting that time into like my meditative practice and into like energetic work, energy medicine, and I'm not doing what I need to do to take care of me, then I do see that the arthritis, it's still there, and it will impact me, right, in a negative way. But it's so much more like I still see a rheumatologist every few years. Like I see him. And he doesn't know what to do with me because, it's like, okay, so how's it going? And he has to do my movements with my joints and that, and he writes down his notes, but that's it. And I do that because I respect modern medicine and I respect his perspective. And if he ever has something and I feel it's in alignment with what my personal path is, and, I'm always open-minded about it. But for me, I've had so much good progress, like when I was pregnant, I didn't have a remission. Like I know some people said during pregnancy, they didn't feel anything. So, but I had a really healthy pregnancy, and I didn't have a lot of joint pain. And with the weather, once in a while, if I'm doing things that I shouldn't be doing, then I do feel it, right? Like I can be a doctor, like, no, the weatherman is not right today. But as long as I'm applying all those best practices, then I really have a lot of comfort in my body and a lot of peace. But I also do have some, what would you call it, with contractures in that in my body from when I was little, like because I had, from the arthritis doing the damage it did in the past, right? So
yeah, no, but that's so powerful. And I think something that my colleague, I'm laughing at myself because she's far above me, but Dr. Brawny came on the podcast way long ago, and she has a PhD in psychology, and she's an occupational therapist, and she lives with fibromyalgia. And she made this point from acceptance and commitment therapy, but it's that like it's worth it. We do things that we know can cause us pain. Like once you get to know your body and know your triggers, you might say, like in your case, you mentioned gluten and sugar, if it's a really special event, like a wedding or a birthday, you might say, I know that this action, I will later on, I'll feel a little bit stiffer, but it's worth it because I want to enjoy this moment, or I want to just enjoy the sensory experience of eating this take, so I think with healing, sometimes it can become this very myopic focus of like a perfectionism. I don't, nothing that you've said sounds like that, but I'm saying about other people I've talked to, like, people, there's this orthorexia, which is basically like an unhealthy obsession with, it's psychologically unhealthy obsession with healthy and clean eating, that can happen. So I love that you're embracing this very like, peaceful, balanced approach.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, I think it's so important to, do whatever that means, right? Like, so there might be some people and for them it's, 100% and they're hardcore.
True.
And if that works for them, then, like, woohoo, right? But
True.
from my own life path, I just find that, kind of navigating that terrain and making those choices and making them as best as we can, right? And yeah, but everyone has such a unique life path, and there's places where we all meet. But no, I appreciate what you shared there. That's an interesting way to look at it as well.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way before, because I think, again, I was kind of like a all or nothing personality, I guess, because I was like, well, of course, your goal is to just not have pain. Or I shouldn't say, I was like an avoidant person. I wanted to avoid pain. Like, goal is avoid pain, at all costs. And I thought she just made a really good point that like sometimes we do things, or like, yeah, pick up my child, postpartum, when I knew, oh, my hands are a little sore today, but it's like, I want to pick up my child. I don't want to ask someone else to pick them up for me right now. So I'm going to experience a little pain to have that joy of picking them up myself and holding them to my chest, something like that. Um,
Yeah, I think that's a great one. Like I think it's really important to make the best choices, and some things are worth the risk, right? Like picking up your child and having that mother moment. I know there's some things that I did too, like being a mom, that I pushed myself physically in different ways, even just something as simple for everyone else, riding a bike. Like for me, that was a huge thing. And I learned, because I wanted to bike with them when they were kids. I thought, I don't want to miss out on bike rides with my kids. So I'm learning, and it was scary because I didn't want to damage, didn't want to fall and take a hit to my joints. But it was intelligent risks with pads too. I put like knee pads on.
Smart. Yeah.
Being protective, but taking intelligent risks where you see that there's a greater good, like greater reward that can come out of it, right? And everyone, that's going to be a little bit different for as well.
That's so true. The cost benefit analysis for each individual is really different. Well, this has been so great. I wish we had like hours and hours to chat, but before I have to wrap up, do you have anything else you want to say to the audience, or any messages for maybe my favorite kind of people to talk to these days are the newly diagnosed, shouldn't say favorite, I love everyone, but like that's, my heart goes out because that's such an overwhelming time. Do you have anything you'd want to share?
Yeah, sure. So I would say that just, stay open-minded and open-hearted as much as you can. This is a challenging life path to be on. But the more that you stay open, the more that you can see, what's going to work for you, right? And follow that and really explore. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to investigate different modalities and different pathways to weave whatever's best for your journey. And I call it your own hero or healer's journey, and that's what you're on. And I wish you like much success. And I also am going to give you a link, Cheryl, for your community, so they can all have access to this book for free, as well as the online quiz and the stories, to hopefully give them some more hope and some ideas for healing and balance as well.
That's phenomenal. I really appreciate that. Yeah. And I think that, more tools in your toolbox, the more empowered you a lot of time. Thank you. I'm sorry we don't have longer, but this is going to be so helpful, I know, to so many people. I just really appreciate your time and your energy. I can feel your energy through the Zoom, through the power of the screen. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cheryl. And I appreciate your time, and I feel your energy too. You're so genuine, and you're so caring and giving and generous. And I love sharing with you. And the link, I believe, is going to be the S.O.S. I think it's S.O.S audiobook /ALP for Arthritis Life pod.
Oh, okay, great. And
Yeah.
I'll make sure to get it for the show notes. And you're on Instagram at Unity Schmidt, SCHMIDT, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, awesome. No, I really appreciate your perspective. I think I've mentioned this before, but I sometimes get a little stressed out when I think about like all the different treatment options, and like, again, that part of me that I still have that part of me that just wants the one path for everyone. I'm just a little stubborn about that. So I think I think it's just so important for many people, including myself, to get out of that mindset that there's only one path. There's so many different, like you and I are similar ages. I mean, I was diagnosed at different times, definitely affects it a lot because I was immediately put on biologics, which makes my prognosis different. But still, we have different journeys, and we both achieved our dreams of being a mom. Both of us achieved the dream of being a wounded healer. I'm just like going to call myself that now. I love it. So thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I love having the time with you today. And thanks for all you do. I love how you help out the community and empower everyone with tools.
Oh,
And
thank you.
everything.
Oh my gosh. Mutual appreciation. Okay. Bye bye for now.
Bye, Cheryl. Thank you.